Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Superman and Lois Season 1, Episode 7. It's called Man of Steel. And full spoilers for the episode, especially before I say what I'm about to say, which I almost said without saying full spoilers. The title is very apt, given
very clever,
a reveal that takes place in this episode.
These CW shows, they love an Episode 7 reveal. Because it was Episode 7 of Supergirl that did the Martian Manhunter one.
Oh, really? There's a formula here then, I guess, where they're... for whatever reason, they found that Episode 7 is the perfect place to do it. So the mysterious Luthor, the Lex Luthor as we've been calling him from the other Earth, we find out is actually John Henry Irons, otherwise known as Steel. And that he was building the suit for Luthor, which is why the AI, because that was like the one, because they revealed that like halfway through the episode, but there was still the lingering, like, okay, why is the computer calling him Mr. Luthor though? What was the give on that? And part of me was thinking, oh, maybe it's just he's John Henry Irons on this Earth, but on the other Earth he's a Luthor. But then it clarified it later on with one of the flashbacks, which was that the computer's AI is still designed for a Luthor. So clearly the suit was originally built with him in mind, but then changed at some point. And he was going to wear it himself, and that's why it keeps calling him Captain Luthor. So, and he has a daughter with Lois as well. We get that revealed in the flashbacks. Called Natalie Irons. I checked that in the credits because I was like, am I calling her Natasha? Because I feel like there's a lot of Natasha similarities going on here.
Very clearly inspired by, including the hair and everything. Yeah,
the hair especially. It was the sort of thing where I wasn't necessarily thinking they were going for anyone specific when she first appeared and she was a bit younger. But once we got to them working together, building stuff, and we eventually got to the hammer, it was like, oh, okay. Like, there's a lot of parallels going on here. And they get to do this. They get to like have their cake and eat it because it's a different Earth for a start. So it's fine that he's slightly villainous. But even then, he's not really villainous from his perspective, which is I suppose the important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, he's antagonistic for sure. Misguided, but on his Earth, probably a hero.
Well, this is the thing. I think this episode has done the best for him, not just because of the reveal of who he is. Like, that's cool and all, but I think the scene of watching an army of Supermen burn the city to the ground was actually quite effective. And I thought it looked like a good effect, actually. Just, by the show standards, I thought the city, the buildings falling down looked quite good. But I think even more effective than that was when it was intercutting later on as he was asking our Lois if she trusted Superman, and it was intercutting with him watching his Lois die like on TV because she was trying to report Superman's one weakness on TV before she gets burned alive. It was a really I don't say this lately with a CW superhero show. It was a good use of transitioning between present day and flashbacks.
That is a pretty huge statement for a CW show. Yeah. I mean, I agree with it. I agree with your point, but just throwing that out into the world.
Well, Arrow kind of ruined me a little bit, It was almost hurtful by the time we got to like season 6, the way it was. Not even 6, because they stopped doing the flashbacks by that point, hadn't they?
When they started doing flash forwards?
Yeah. Did we get like one season without anything?
No, not a chance.
No. Oh no, they started because the season after they stopped doing the proper flashbacks because it wasn't the 5-year anymore. They started doing like what's happening at the end of the season on the island, right? That was like a thing for a season.
Yes.
And then the final season was all the flash forwards.
Flash forwards, yeah. They definitely didn't break formula though.
That's fair. Yeah. I don't remember that either. But I think I did a good enough job of making him more interesting, of making him something other than just, I appreciate that they learn a lot. I appreciate that Lois was always kind of on that something was off here. Even when she doubts herself at the end of this episode, I like that she still suspects there's more that they don't know. There's something else going on here. And they're right, because they don't know about him being married to a version of Lois Lane. That part, they don't, I mean, he's kind of hinted that Superman's a bad guy in his Earth, but they don't really know the specific shit or exactly like the world sort of like just destroying nature of it or anything like that. he just sounds he sounds like a bit of a nut job so far to them from their perspective.
Pretty much. And they seem to still be a little bit just fuzzy in general on everything about him. Like, I don't know, I know they haven't had much details to go on, but even towards the end, they're like, yeah, it's just the barest minimum. Like, I guess he's from another Earth. They just, because they haven't had the interrogation with him yet, they don't really know anything.
Yeah, that's coming next, presumably. Because I enjoyed the moment where Clark's like looking into his little RV, and the computer calls him Captain Luther, and the way Clark's head just kind of snaps like around, like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That means something. And just, them working together. It's funny because like so much of this show, the A plots in a lot of ways have been the teenagers, and in this episode they kind of were shifted to the B plot, and the Luther stuff, or I should say Steel stuff, took center stage and became the A plot this episode. And I think to its credit, I wasn't missing the focus of, because it was working. Like for the most part, we were enjoying the drama with the kids, and in fact, the kids stuff in this episode almost followed. It's not right to call it a formula because that's not what it is. But in the sense that there's one point where I'm like, oh no, they're doing this. I don't know if I want them to do this. But then it was kind of okay by the end. It wasn't an issue.
It was probably the most CW that the teenager plot has been yet, in that it hit every single beat pretty much as I expected it to, on like I would expect on any of these shows, but mercifully didn't linger on any of it by the end.
It didn't linger, and it also, because they've done such a good job, 6 episodes out of 7, it's not like I'm not scared of it.
Suddenly worrying.
Yeah, like I'm not scared of it. It's like, fine, well,
lots of very good shows have a misstep for an episode.
If their track record is going to be 6 out of 7, I can live with that.
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
I can live with 6 out of 7.
Especially if you get them like 6 in a row consistently. If it's like, you're gonna put up with 5 in a row to get 30 good episodes. I don't know. 5 in a row is a lot.
Yeah, but I don't know. You'd forget about it quite quickly once it starts getting good. Those 5 episodes would feel so distant by the time you get to episode 22. So yeah, the teenage stuff. Obviously, Jordan's dealing. Because we actually questioned last episode why Clark didn't necessarily. Because I thought he was going to figure out his superhero had kicked in, but he actually does within like seconds of this episode. He's like, "It's his superhero. His superhero's kicked in," and Gerald's like, "Well, you're just going to have to teach him like you learned." It's like, aye, which is actually one of these things where, if you look at some of this as a spiritual successor to Smallville, not because Smallville deserves a spiritual successor, but in the sense that we're dealing with a teenager like getting his powers for the first time, there is an interesting dynamic of, no, Clark went through this, he knows what it was like, and he's able to actually offer real advice as opposed to just vague, well, son, I think we all go through challenges growing up.
Yeah, there's some like quite reassuring about, I guess. When when they're like, well, how long did it take you? And it's like a few weeks. So there's this preparation that, maybe this will take a few weeks of being rough.
And a few weeks isn't actually that bad, but I get why to Jordan it'd feel like, oh my god, a few weeks of this. Like, it's like in hindsight, a few weeks is nothing. But at the start of the few weeks,
Clark's like, it's a few weeks. It's not, not the end of the world. But if you're being told you're going to be in constant agony for a few weeks, you'd be like, I'd rather not. Yeah,
I think. Yeah, because obviously the CW thing we were kind of dancing around before was when Jordan hears Jonathan and Sarah having a conversation, which sounds not even flirty, just like they're being kind of, they've just made up after they've had kind of an argument, and they're being a little bit more intimate's maybe not even the right word, but just a little bit more forthcoming with each other. And it sounds a little bit like there's like a blossoming relationship, out of context. The sad part is I think a lot of the details around it are fine. Like, I do like the idea of him thinking of her voice as something to zone in on, even though it's a little bit like, on a larger scale, he's going to have to not do this in the future because ultimately he is just spying on people. But as a method of trying to like center himself, the idea that her voice is the one thing that he can kind of hone in on and that'll make him feel better is a sweet idea.
I definitely like that idea. I do think that when Jonathan realizes, he should have kind of maybe had a bit of a callback to the episode when, they were being listened to and they were like, hey, you hated it just as much. Don't pull this shit.
Yeah, honestly, if my biggest sort of moment during this plot that I went, I don't know if I felt that scene as much, was just how angry Jonathan got as quickly as he did. And particularly the way that he sort of then banged on the wall to like make Jordan feel worse. It felt like it went. It's not that anything felt out of character, unjustified, and that I don't buy that it could get to that point. It was more just that it's almost like the episode was tight for time, so they had to get him from a 6 to an 11 in the space of 25 seconds, and I just didn't quite buy the progression to get. I don't feel like Jordan said something that really should have triggered the response he gave him at that point.
That's fair. It's hard to disagree with that.
Yeah. Again, it's not so much that I don't buy that they can have enough of a fight that he will be a dick and, it's like, because ultimately, going forward, he's going to have less and less of a way to get to Jordan, because Jordan's superpowers are going to make it very difficult. So, if this is one chance to like be able to slam a door or slam his hand.
That's when the emotional barbs come in, and it gets real cruel.
That's when he starts sleeping with some kryptonite under his bed, just for a rainy day.
That's just like, Sarah doesn't even like you bitch.
But of course, Sarah is very, very keen on finding out what Jordan's going through. Is speculating that there are lies going on, and I actually kind of like the scene towards the end where Jonathan admits that he told more of the truth than normal to make it more convincing, but that actually, in a way, almost felt worse, because it felt like he felt more deceptive because she was feeling like she was being let in on it, but he knew that secretly she wasn't really being, and that made him feel worse. I think that's an interesting sort of.
It's interesting to play with as well, especially as at the same sort of time as they're having to learn to do these lies and on a consistent level. On the opposite end of the scale, you've got Clark and Lois being like, all right, no more secrets, and it's the complete other end of the spectrum.
I think what I like about the dynamic between those two elements is that obviously you watch a lot of teenage shows where one kid's secretly Superman or a superhero or a vampire slayer, for example, and you have this thing where they can't tell people, but eventually people are going to find out and they're going to let friends in on secrets, and the identity is going to become more known as time goes on. But the interesting dynamic here, I think, the weight of the character of Superman and the history of that character, the 80-year history where we all know who Superman is and we know how important the secret identity is. The idea of Sarah finding out about Jordan means she has to find out Clark is Superman, and that makes it feel bigger. It makes it feel like a bigger deal in a lot of ways.
I kind of disagree on that premise. I don't think she does have to find out about...
Okay, let me rephrase. She doesn't have to, but ultimately it kind of leads there eventually.
It probably does eventually, but I don't know. Given that I'm no longer certain that Jordan's powers are his Kryptonian heritage. I'm starting to wonder if maybe he's being caught by the ex-kryptonite at the at the pie when everything was going down in the first place. If maybe he's kind of been infected by it in the same way that Edge is trying to do with the others.
That's definitely possible. I feel like even if that turns out to be the case, that's why it triggered, and maybe why it triggers on Jonathan. I've got a funny feeling when this plot's all wrapped up and they've dealt with all the superpowered beings that Morgan Edge has created, which feels... I don't feel like that's going to be... Maybe it will be wrapped up at the end of season 1. It feels like a 2-season thing to me right now, this whole plot. But...
I think that's wishful thinking.
Why?
Because, I don't know, I feel like as much as we're praising this show, it's still a CW show. It's going to follow the formula. It's going to have a season plot, and that's going to be wrapped up.
I guess I'm thinking Steel is the season plot and Morgan Edge is more of an ongoing thing, but I could be wrong there. But regardless of when it ends, which is really not the point here, the point is that I think we're going to find, even if the kids are only getting superpowers because they've come into contact with this thing, when all the other superpowered beings are taken care of, these kids, let's say there's a way to like take the powers away, or something's going to reverse the effects eventually. I've got a feeling that these two are going to end up keeping their powers because they're Kryptonian.
Yeah, I'm not at all suggesting the show's going to take them away. I think more just in this episode we have Edge saying Leslie Lar's the only one who's had it without side effects and rejecting the stuff so far. I suspect it's the Kryptonian biology that's letting Jordan not reject them outright as much as he is.
Yeah, I do think they're going to play it both ways, though. I do genuinely think there's going to be a natural element to it where, maybe the powers would have eventually kicked in anyway. It was just going to take longer for whatever reason, and it's just been brought along quicker because of the X-Kryptonite, or at the very least, because of who they are, because of their natural biology, they get to keep the powers when everyone else doesn't. Or,
yeah,
I do think there's going to be a natural part of it that's going to kick in, just to make them feel like they're more special than just they came into contact with a thing.
Sure.
I feel like it's going that way. Again, there's been no indication of Jonathan. Although I did see some speculation that the punch that Jonathan took in the hand, in theory, should have done way more damage than it actually did, and maybe it's the first sign that maybe he does have a little bit of resistance in him versus a regular person. I don't know if that's just a bit reaching, though, because it felt like that feels more like a natural mistake, or a natural sliding of the scale for movie sake.
How much more damage should it have done? It was a punch, right?
Yeah, it was a superpower punch. It just shattered his whole hand. His hand should be a bag of pebbles.
That's assuming that Jordan is as strong as Superman.
Yeah. Well, actually, the one thing, just to go back to the whole eavesdropping scene, is that I did kind of like Jordan realizing, because he punches the wall. He gets angry and punches the wall, and he punches a hole through it. Yeah. And I do like the moment after that where he realizes that he just got angry and acted out of anger again. Like, he just had this instant reaction, and he knows he can't do that, and he immediately feels guilty about it. You can see it in his face. It's a really good little moment, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that's good stuff. The big thing, though, is that obviously Steel, I should probably just call him Irons. I don't know. I feel like if it was talking about comics, we'd just call him Steel. It feels weird to just call him Steel in this, because it's not like he's walking around to Steel a lot of the time. So, and I don't know if I prefer calling him John or Irons, or Henry Irons, or John Henry.
It'd be John Henry, wouldn't it?
I've never had to deal with this because he's just always been Steel, but it feels, even though he is technically Steel, like it feels a bit off in this.
And it doesn't help that we haven't had anyone call him by his name.
No.
Right? No, like at no point did Lois on his Earth address him as, John or John Henry, respectively. It was just because they were keeping it secret still at that point.
I mean, the obvious thing is that he's eventually going to take that mantle on this Earth when he goes through some redemption and realizes that he can't trust this Superman or something, right? Like, maybe that's not where it's going to go, but like, you can see him almost coming in with that hammer to help Superman in the final fight. Probably when Morgan Edge has like 5 Kryptonian level powered beings like fighting Superman, and is it just
throw that hammer at him? It
just so happens that John Henry's been looking at ways to fight Kryptonians all this time, so maybe he can actually help out. The reluctant alliance writes itself almost once we get there.
Kind of does, yeah.
Yeah, so, which isn't a problem. I'm fine with that happening. It's just I'll be curious. Like, I'll be curious to see how they do the moment where what makes them kind of consider differently. Like, what's the moment? Is it something Lois does? I actually thought there was going to be something in this episode, because what we get to, obviously, there's a lot of back and forth about he wants to meet Superman, blah blah blah. Superman comes to see him, and he's basically, we get that great montage where it's like cutting between him working what he's doing in the present with building the hammer in the past with his daughter. But what I thought it was going to, because we have this thing where Jordan collapses, but he hears that Superman's in trouble. He hears his dad, crying in pain, basically, and the other voice like threatening him, and he's like, "Jonathan, we gotta go." And that technically neither of them can really drive, but they just jump in the truck and just go for it because he needs help. I thought this was actually really well done. This entire little section, it was nice and tension filled. Not that I really believed anything was going to happen to Superman, because it's episode 7 and he's Superman, but more just the idea of them getting involved and like somehow pulling something off as haphazard it's going to be, because they're not trained and they're not used to doing this. It was an interesting idea, and what I thought might happen, because they come in with a truck, they hit John Henry with the car.
One of my only problems with this scene is how far he flies when they hit him.
Bit comical.
Like they stop dead, like they're breaking and they stop completely dead, and he goes flying across the room.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, not sure it would happen quite like that.
That's fair. What I thought was going to happen for a second when they were on their way is that when he saw, because obviously he's been spying on Lois, because he's obsessed with her because it's his wife technically, but what he's not really seen evidence of yet, or we've never seen him watch or know about beyond maybe just the key detail of they exist, is the kids, right? And I thought maybe the thing that would humanize Superman for him here is the idea of these two kids getting in the way, even though he's got this big hammer, and them saying, no, you're not hurting our dad, or something like that. And that would maybe, in his eyes, and they may still go down this path eventually, where it's him having teenage kids that are willing to stick up for him, that ultimately lets him see some reason, and sort of like, because he'll think of his daughter, he'll relate to it, it's there. But I also, I mean, I suppose it's worth mentioning this red UV light does not affect Jonathan. Because
not?
It's affecting Jordan, I think, but not Jonathan.
I can't remember how much it was affecting Jordan.
I mean, Jordan, it's debatable if Jordan was getting affected by the red light, or if he was just still in pain from all the voices and the sounds.
That was my assumption.
Yeah. But so he could either be either or, is what I'm saying. Whereas Jonathan clearly was not affected by it.
No.
I did laugh though.
Those lights.
Yeah, I did laugh though that he couldn't pick up the hammer properly. He was like dragging it across the. Because I actually genuinely thought that Jordan was going to step up and like just stand up and like grab it, and as if it was easy, and just sort of pick up the hammer and start hitting things.
Yeah. I will give him the benefit of the doubt that the hand that's broken is the hand that that's his good arm.
Ah, okay. Oh, that's
so
it's one. Yeah, he's one-handed right now. That's true. That's a fair point.
He was using the other hand to kind of like swing it, with put an extra bit of force, just kind of pushing it, but he can't grab it with that hand, and I'm assuming that's his good hand.
Because while I buy John Henry here is stronger than a teenager, he's still a human being, so it shouldn't be like something Superman would lift up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think it is. I think it's heavy. Don't wrong.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I think he's using his weaker hand and trying to lift it. Because clearly, like by then he does swing it and hit the lights. It's clearly not impossible. So yeah, I buy it.
I did appreciate the quick mumble jumble just to get across to the audience very quickly how powerful this hammer could be. He just sort of describes it as a distance thing because of the metal involved. That if the impact comes from 10 feet, it's this strong. 30 feet, it's the power of a bus. Anything beyond 50 feet is comparable to a Superman punch. And that it's like, okay, we understand. Simple.
Good enough. Yeah.
I thought that was a neat, quick way of just getting across to us why this hammer is going to hurt Superman. It's like he's been punched by another Kryptonian. Okay.
Yeah. Plus he's weak at the moment.
Plus he's weak with the red light. So neat. There's a little interesting moment at the end though, where he does walk over to John Henry, and it's Lois who says, "Enough, it's over." And Clark does look he's ready to punch him.
He does, and it was a bit unnecessary. He's clearly down.
I will critique this because I feel like this is them just trying to give a little bit of credence to John Henry when he starts to try to convince people that Superman could go bad. He's got this example. There's this little tease that he could lose his temper.
I get where you're coming from. I think it was meant to be more for us as an audience, kind of following on from last week's of, he has his anger issues that he has to keep under control as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe a bit both.
Yeah. It felt a bit overly done just for the sake of like tying it into that.
I did like it cutting between reality and then John Henry's perspective where you see him in black.
Yeah, no, he's like, imagining his version of Superman. I actually kind of like that. I almost wish, because what I thought was going to happen is that when it cut back to reality and it was our Superman, that his hand wouldn't be raised in a punch. It would just be, he's just standing over him to make sure he doesn't do anything or whatever. But he still did have his hand raised as if he was about to punch him in the face.
And the eyes flaring.
Yeah. So I thought it was going to do a little thing where, or maybe even make it ambiguous where it could have been that he did have his hand up, but he's just put it down, or like, sort of play with it where how much of that was just his perception coming towards him and how much of it was reality.
Yeah. But it does seem pretty clear at the end that no. He had his hand up.
Yes. So, we'll see. I do like them deciding to tell the kids everything though from this point on. Enough of the secrecy bullshit. We're just going to like, okay, who wants to ask a question first? So, and it's just funny because obviously at the start of the episode, Lois was the one against telling them everything. Like, yeah, okay, we want to tell them you're Superman and stuff, but all this conspiracy stuff, the villains we're investigating, like maybe that's a bit too much for them to handle. But the episode, I do like that it's a 1 episode arc where she sort of sees, oh, they're going to get involved, like danger's going to come around every so often. They just have to be aware.
I'm glad that, and this isn't exclusive to this show, but just in general in superhero stuff, we're kind of past this protect the loved ones with secrets.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
thing.
bullshit. Is it? Because well, this episode's a clear example of it. Is if they know the danger exists, they can maybe do things to avoid it. They can make choices that are informed with the danger. So, so I'm glad they're past it. I'm glad they just that's it now. They're all in on it, which is interesting because it comes right after the kids are talking about feeling shitty about lying to Sarah. And it's interesting that they're getting a dump of information that now they also can't tell Sarah. So it's making that big barrel just more full.
It feels like it's a matter of time before they feel like they have to tell her for kind of like the same reasons that the parents are telling them. But they're like, no, we have to kind of give us something because she's a little bit too Loisy in the sense that she's got the idea that something's up.
She smells a mystery.
Powers. Yeah, she's not going to let it go, and it's at some point it is going to get her in trouble.
Yeah,
it'll be down to them to. They're going to have to come clean to a certain extent.
After Kyle dies, I could totally see both Sarah and Lana finding out because Lana's involved with the investigation stuff right now. I could easily see an eventuality where they're both kind of letting on the secrets a little bit, just out of necessity.
Yeah, I can see that. And let's be honest, again, these CW shows love to have big wide casts where everyone knows.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about Lana is in the comics, Lana is the first one to know outside of the Kents. So it's actually really funny that Lana doesn't know in this show. So
unless you knew all along.
Although it would be funny if because I'm expecting Kale to either die or leave at the end of the season, just because he feels like that character. He feels like that character is going to be gone at the end of season 1, or maybe it's just wishful thinking. But maybe he would be really emasculated to find out that his wife's ex is Superman.
Wild prediction time.
Okay.
Very wild. He does find out, and he's very annoyed about it.
He volunteers to be a villain.
He volunteers to be Edge's subject to get the powers. And he is this, the black suit Superman, essentially, for this Earth.
Do you know, conceptually it's fine, but I kind of hate it.
Just because it's Kyle.
I think it's just because it's just the most obvious thing, and it doesn't make him more interesting because he goes down that path.
Of course it doesn't make it more interesting.
Yeah.
No, of course not.
Because Lana's whole thing this episode is that she is technically spying for Lois, but she's been given the task of finding 5 new potential managers or executives or something.
Young Executive Program, I think it was called.
Whatever the phrase was. And she actually doesn't pick someone because she knows them and likes them. Because it's like a local townsperson who she calls a friend. And she intentionally doesn't pick her because she's trying to keep the people she knows away from what she now knows is a dangerous place that could lead to bad things. And then Morgan Edge kind of slyly goes behind her back and just picks her anyway. And then we find out that these 5 are actually candidates to be injected with the X-Kryptonite.
Not before he makes her feel guilty for not kind of putting her husband forward for it.
I know.
It's like, hey, he's like, you're in a position of power now. Nepotism. This is what it's all about. And she's like, eh.
I mean, credit where credit is due. There's no Kyle in this episode.
It's true.
I mean, I suppose I have to give the point where the point is warranted. There's no Kyle. So, a fair play in that. That was a weird scene, though. Like, did he want Kyle to be one of the test subjects?
Don't know.
Is he intentionally prodding at her for other psychological reasons that he wants to mess? I don't know.
Edge is a weird one.
Is this just because he's got the hots for her and he's trying to like, yeah, see, you clearly don't care about your husband that much. It's time to accept that things are done and move on.
That, or maybe he wanted to put her husband forward so that it's like, all right, I'll inject him with the stuff, and if he rejects it and dies, oh well, I can swoop in.
Alternatively, that may backfire and he could be a super powered individual and he's trying to steal his wife still.
Yeah, look, it's a risky game, this.
Mm-hmm. That's very risky. I did kind of appreciate that in an episode where Jordan is learning to try and control his super hearing and the eavesdropping trouble that gets him into, I do kind of like this the light touch here where the henchwoman, you know, Lar, she is basically spends the entire episode listening for things until Superman's like busy, and that's when they can move their shipments. It's a simple little thing, but
I like it conceptually. I got sick of it cutting back to her just in that room staring.
Oh, maybe a bit too much of it. I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. But
I agree conceptually. It's a nice idea.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's almost like she's figured out, oh wait, I can use this to my advantage now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Useful.
It's some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that everything, or did we talk about all the
A couple of like really small things. One good, one bad.
Go on.
I'll get the bad one out of the way first. When they're discussing, Clark and Lois are discussing the potential of him being a Luthor, because it's after he's heard the name in the RV, and they're like, "Oh well, with everything we know about the multiverse, he could be a cousin or a son or something." Like, so you're addressing the multiverse head on, but the possibility of another Earth is absurd.
I don't think that's the. I think the train of thought there is that one possibility is the multiverse, or he could be a cousin or a son or something that's been hidden. I think that's the sort of the line of thought there. It's not.
Maybe
it
just came across a bit weird.
I think it's no. Multiverse means it just could be a Lex Luthor from somewhere else, or he could have a secret son, cousin, something.
I'd have thought that, but then they never mention the multiverse thing. They follow up on the checking the family tree, and they're going through it all. But like the multiverse thing is thrown up in that one line there, and then not again until the end.
Well, I think at the end they accept it because once they know that the person he is here is dead, they're like, okay, well, he has to be from a different Earth then. So, I mean, they do acknowledge that people have come back to life in this world before, so it's not entirely out of.
They do. I think it's more just once Clark's put together that he's the stranger, as he was calling him, and the stranger said, "On my Earth."
Yeah. So, you know, it's yeah. I think I got what they were doing with that line. Maybe it could have been clearer the way that it was phrased.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The line I did like, although, again, more just in a, it made me chuckle. I'm not sure how intentional it was. Is when Lois goes to see him after he's been lying about his name.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, in his RV, he's like, well, come in and we'll talk about it. And she's like, I'm not getting into your creepy RV with a guy who I don't even know. And he's like, ouch, that hurts. It's like, and that was rude. I'm like, I don't think that's rude. I think it's pretty good not to get into some random guy's trailer when you literally don't know who they are and they've been lying to you. But it was kind of like, I was getting a chuckle from it, but I don't know how intentional it was.
I think you're overthinking this. I think it's exactly as intended, and the point is she makes a very good point. I'm not getting into some random guy's van, right, alone.
It was the way he seemed genuinely offended by it. And maybe he was because he's like, this is Lois to him.
Well, no, it wasn't genuine. He wasn't offended in that way. It was more of a. I mean, it's weird to say lighthearted given the context of who he is and everything, but it was more just a sort of the casual kind of like, oh well, that kind of hurts a little bit that you could think that about me, but it's all right. I don't. I hasten to say that you're probably overthinking this a little bit too much.
Possibly. In this case, I'm going to say for me it was the way it was portrayed. It came across as a bit more genuine. It didn't come across as the lighthearted, I'm wounded sort of thing. It came across as a bit too genuine, like he felt hurt. But
no, I didn't get genuine hurt. I didn't necessarily get he was joking either. It was more of a. He's trying to play everything cool because of all the lies that he's telling her still at this point. So everything's just kind of through this veil. So I don't know, it didn't feel out of place to me.
Fair enough.
I did appreciate though, because even I thought it was a bit fishy when he said, "Oh, why don't you come in and we'll discuss it?" Oh yeah, I'll come into your tiny little RV on my own to discuss it, shall I? Yes.
Yes.
I'm glad Lois was smart.
Let's go to
this.
a public place.
Public place with witnesses, you bastard. But also uses this as a chance to get him out there so that Superman can investigate, and then
I did
on,
like as well that when he sees it on the camera, it's just like, oh, it's just the husband, nothing to worry about. It's like, of course, Lois sent her husband in to snoop. Like that doesn't surprise him at all. But he's like, it's harmless, don't worry about it.
Yeah. I think I thought before that he knew who Superman was, but I don't get that impression from this episode.
No, I never had that impression.
It's because he looked so hurt when she was kissing him, like when she saw him.
And it was just that it was his wife kissing someone else.
I know, but I took it even more like, no, she's kissing Superman. I guess maybe that'll still come at some point then when he finally learns that.
Yeah.
Lois is literally with Superman in this world. That
is going to sting.
That is going to sting. But I got that impression, so when he's like, oh, it's just a husband, nothing to worry about. I thought you knew he was Superman, but okay, fair enough. Clearly you don't.
At least it made it explicitly clear for you this way.
That's true. Because even after this, I was still thinking, oh, maybe he's just playing dumb. Like when he's saying, I'll meet up, set up a meeting with Superman and Clark standing like right there. I thought he was still just sort of playing the act, but nah, okay.
No, it really wasn't.
Well, that is going to hurt.
Yeah, it is.
That is definitely going to sting. So no, interesting. And we don't know about the fate of his daughter actually, because it sounds like he gets swept away here when he went to go fight, and he promised to come back, and that's kind of why he's hurt at the end, because he's thinking about that promise, and obviously he's still stuck here. But it's left kind of entirely open that she's still well and alive, in that bunker, doing.
Would not be surprising if by the time he gets back, she has taken up the mantle herself a little bit, and that's how we get her in an outfit too.
I wouldn't be surprised if she does some research, figures out how to beam to a different multiverse or a different universe, and shows up in a suit like ready to fight. But by that point, he'll have like built a bond with Superman, so he's going to have to try and
talk her down.
Yeah,
I can see that.
There's a lot of ways that can go, I think. So bizarrely, I do think it's probably the best they've handled the main plot so far in terms of the Now Steel stuff. It's the most interesting.
Not that it's ever been bad though.
No, but it's just always kind of been, it's been there, it's been setting up, it's been fine. But I think this made it actively a bit more interesting and had a bit more dynamic to it. Whilst the teen stuff was still good, although maybe with the biggest missteps it's had, but nothing particularly lasting or damning.
Yeah, thankfully by the end everything was kind of back to normal.
I think what helps it a lot is the chemistry between the two brothers. So when they're sitting at that bed and they're kind of opening up and apologizing and sort of laughing about whatever, it feels like, yeah, no matter what bullshit, even if it felt like a scene went a bit too far with what one of them said to the other, I kind of buy that they're over it now. And it doesn't feel, that part doesn't feel forced. So I think that's what really helps out a lot when it does maybe go a step too far with some stuff. But alright, there you go. That's Superman and Lois, episode 7, which is not even the middle. Next week's the middle episode. This is a 15 episode season, so we're not, we're just getting to the halfway point. So we'll find out where we go from here next week. Let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, go to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and you can support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?